The fairy tales of Walt Disney are actually very different from what we've been taught. We've compiled the real, original, and disturbing endings of many fairy tale characters like Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, and many more for you. 1. Snow White. In the Disney version, her wicked stepmother casts Snow White into the forest. The princess then begins to live with the 7 dwarfs. Snow White takes a bite of a poisoned apple given by her stepmother, who is actually a witch, and dies. Afterwards, a prince arrives, kisses Snow White, and they get married and live happily ever after. In fact, the real story is quite different. While the dwarfs are carrying Snow White's coffin, one of them trips over a stone. When the coffin stumbles, the piece of apple in Snow White's mouth falls out. The princess wakes up, and the prince explains what happened to her. They then decide to get married. When the stepmother learns that Snow White is alive, she attends the wedding. The stepmother, intending to kill the princess, is forced to dance in red-hot iron shoes and dies while dancing. 2. Cinderella. In Disney's version of the tale, Cinderella is mistreated by her stepmother and stepsisters, but is able to attend the royal ball with the help of a fairy godmother. She dances with the prince, but has to leave before midnight, losing her shoe as she rushes home. The prince finds the shoe and searches the kingdom for the girl who fits it, eventually finding Cinderella. They live happily ever after. However, in the original version, the prince goes to Cinderella's house to try the shoe on the girls living there. The stepmother tells her daughters to cut off their toes to fit into the shoe. The prince notices the cut toes during the fitting. Eventually, the prince and Cinderella get married, but as punishment, doves peck out the eyes of Cinderella's stepmother and stepsisters. 3. Sleeping Beauties. In Disney's version of the tale, Cinderella is mistreated by her stepmother and stepsisters, but is able to attend the royal ball with the help of a fairy godmother. She dances with the prince, but has to leave before midnight, losing her shoe as she rushes home. The prince finds the shoe and searches the kingdom for the girl who fits it, eventually finding Cinderella. They live happily ever after. However, in the original version, the prince goes to Cinderella's house to try the shoe on the girls living there. The stepmother tells her daughters to cut off their toes to fit into the shoe. The prince notices the cut toes during the fitting. Eventually, the prince and Cinderella get married, but as punishment, doves peck out the eyes of Cinderella's stepmother and stepsisters. For Beauty and the Beast. In the Disney version of Beauty and the Beast, Belle is kidnapped by an enchanted beast and imprisoned in a castle. However, during this time, Belle discovers the beauty and kindness within the beast. When she kisses him, the spell on the beast is broken. In reality, the tale is quite different. Belle deceives the beast into letting her visit her sister for a week. When her sister sees Belle's jewel-covered clothes, she becomes jealous and insists that Belle stay longer. When Belle eventually returns to the castle, the beast is very angry and gouges out her eyes, leaving her blind. 5. The Little Mermaid. In the Disney tale, Ariel is the daughter of the Sea King. She strikes a deal with a witch to gain human-like legs and sacrifices her voice for this transformation. She falls in love with the prince. The prince kills the witch who took Ariel's voice and restores her voice. They marry and live happily ever after. In reality, Ariel's feet are in great pain, which she cannot endure. She becomes unable to walk. She gives up suffering and throws herself into the sea, turning into foam. The prince marries someone else. 6. Rapunzel. In the Disney version of the fairy tale Rapunzel, Princess Rapunzel is a very beautiful girl who's trapped in a very high tower. A prince finds her and rescues Rapunzel by climbing up her hair. They live happily ever after together. In the original version of the tale, Rapunzel is sold to a witch who locks her up in a tower. While singing in the tower, Rapunzel's voice is heard by a prince who falls in love with her. He climbs up to the tower, but the witch pushes him down. As he falls, he gets entangled in thorns and becomes blind. Despite being blind, he follows Rapunzel's voice and finds her. When he finds her, Rapunzel has 2 children. Seeing the prince, Rapunzel cries, and because of her tears, the prince's eyes are healed, and they marry and live happily ever after. 7. Pinocchio. In the story of Pinocchio that we know, he is a puppet made by a carpenter. However, a fairy brings the puppet to life upon the woodcarver Geppetto's wish. One day, Geppetto falls into the sea. Pinocchio does everything he can and saves his father's life. At that moment, a fairy appears and turns Pinocchio into a real boy. In reality, though, Pinocchio never listens, constantly steals, and always gets his father into trouble. One day, Pinocchio encounters a wolf and a cat. They hang him from a tree. The wolf and the cat watch him until he dies. 8. Hunchback Notre Dame. When we watch the Hunchback of Notre Dame through Disney's eyes, at the end, Quasimodo accepts that he and Esmeralda are friends. Quasimodo, who drives away the villain Frollo, becomes beloved by the people. However, Victor Hugo's vision of the Hunchback of Notre Dame doesn't end like this. If the film had been adapted faithfully as written, Esmeralda should have been hanged by Frollo. Quasimodo should have killed Frollo, and Esmeralda should have died of starvation while Quasimodo waits by her body.